Tutankhamun's death and burial. Mysterious reasons. Funerary equipment 3, shrines, coffi and mummy mask, skullcap. The suggestion was first made decades ago that the second of the 4 gilded shrines surrounding the sarcophagus was not commissioned with Tutankhamun in mind. The color of the gold inside the cartouches, which differs from the surrounding gilding, aroused the suspicion that Tutankhamun's name replaced another. In the meantime, Tutankhamun's original ownership of the 3rd shrine has also been questioned, and Harris has cited additional criteria in support of the idea that both were made for someone else. Earlier theories proposed Menkaure as the owner of the 2nd shrine, but Harris suggests that Akhenaten commissioned both the 2nd and 3rd shrines. He calls attention to the presence in the texts of the royal title perfect ruler rather than the traditional perfect god, and the epithet appearing in the white crown, both especially associated with Akhenaten. But perfect ruler was introduced only in the later years of Akhenaten's reign. Its use is incompatible with the orthodox funerary beliefs expressed in the texts and iconography of the shrines. The inscriptions on the inlaid ebony throne attest the retention of perfect ruler for a time, however brief, after the accession of Tutankhaten. An immediate successor of Akhenaten should be the original owner of the 2nd shrine, if there was one, a person who placed faith in orthodox funerary deities and texts while not rejecting all of Akhenaten's innovations. Determining for whom the 2nd shrine was commissioned is important for the study of Egyptian religion, since the texts include the earliest example of the so-called enigmatic Netherworld book with its synthesis of solar and Osirian beliefs. Clearly, detailed study of all 4 shrines from iconographic and stylistic points of view needs to be undertaken. The excellent high-resolution digital images made by master photographer Sandro Vanini could be put to scholarly use in such a study. The dissimilarity of the facial features to the idealized likeness of Tutankhamun has been cited as a reason to doubt that the 2nd coffin was made for the king's burial. Claude van der Slian, for example, has referred to the disquieting unlikeness of the face's very peculiar square shape and its harsh, sullen expression. As others have also remarked, the 2nd coffin resembles the usurped canopic coffi nets in design and technique, but it is hardly a duplicate of them, for there are differences in detail, and I cannot recognize the purported similarity of physiognomy. Until now, no claim has been made that the texts naming Tutankhamun on the 2nd coffin are not original. If the 2nd coffin can indeed be convincingly dissociated from Tutankhamun, then the question would arise whether either or both of the 2 other coffins belong to him, since the fit of all 3 inside each other is so very snug. Aidan Dodson's forthcoming study of the coffins may yet bring some new evidence to bear on these theories, if not provide a definitive answer to the question of their ownership. Nicholas Reeves has proposed that the face of the famous gold mask, undoubtedly an official likeness of Tutankhamun, replaced the face of the ruling queen, when the mask, too, was adapted for the king's use. The section of spell 151 of the Book of the Dead, which guaranteed the mask's ability to function as the face of the deceased, is inscribed on the back. Both the basin of the 3rd innermost gold coffin and its lid bear the same text, positioned precisely so that the head of the king's mummy, wearing the mask, rested directly underneath as well as on top of the spell. Regardless of whether the mask was made or adapted for the king from a previous owner, the presence of the text in immediate proximity to the mummy is another indication of the trust placed in the efficacy of traditional funerary beliefs. A beaded skull cap lay directly on the king's shaved head below a curious ornament combining a vulture with outspread wings and a uraeus, again presumably emblematic of Osiris's sisters Isis and Nephthys. Set into the bodies of 4 cobras decorating the skull cap were pairs of cartouches bearing what seems to have been a unique variant of the earlier, so minus called didactic name of Akhenaten's god Eton. Since the cap cannot be found today, discussion of the possible meaning of the variant name and its reference relies on Carter's copies of the hieroglyphs and Harry Burton's photographs. Years ago, Desroches Noblecourt proposed an imaginative explanation for the mention of the solar god in immediate proximity to the mummy, For her, the skullcap was evidence of Tutankhamun's abiding faith in Akhenaten's beliefs, with A seeing to the departure of his young predecessor from this life wearing the mark of the well-beloved globe. In the interim, Harris has asked rhetorically if the name of Eton uniquely documented here might be read as a reference to the location of Akhenaten's tomb at Amarna. And he adds that it does show that some pieces at least of tomb equipment, intended for Akhenaten, were later pressed into use for Tutankhamun's burial. But this conclusion begs the question of whether the skullcap was indeed an item of funerary equipment made for Akhenaten. Could it have been made instead between Akhenaten's death and Tutankhaten's accession for a ruler who used epithets associated with Akhenaten at a time when theology had evolved to allow the reassociation of Re-Horakti, mentioned in the cartouches of the skullcap, with Eton? Until conclusive evidence proves otherwise, a list of those items essential for the orthodox funeral of a king that were commissioned for Tutankhamun includes the first and fourth shrines from around the sarcophagus, the outer gilded coffin and the solid gold innermost coffin, the face of the gold mask, the canopic chest, canopy and shrine, but not the coffinets nor, in all probability, the figures of the tutelary goddesses protecting it. The Shabtis, most of the statuettes minus in shrines, the three theriomorphic biers, amulets and amuletic jewelry made of gold, sheeting found on the mummy, the magic bricks in the niches in the burial chamber, the model boats for journeying in the hereafter, the life-size statues guarding the entrance to the burial chamber, and the oars from the FL or of the burial chamber, along with various other sundry small items. Tutankhamun's